Just before lunch one day, a puppet show was put on at school. It was called Mr. Bungle Goes to Lunch. His hands were dirty. But Mr. Bungle didn't stop to wash his hands. He went right to lunch. Even though this made the children laugh, no one thought that was a fair thing to do. Phil knew that a Mr. Bungle wouldn't have many friends. He wouldn't want to be like Mr. Bungle, Mr. Bungle, Mr. Bungle. Phil remembered that Mr. Bungle didn't wash his hands. Were his hands clean? No, they were a little dirty. Phil washed his hands well, with lots of soap. Lots of soap, lots of soap, lots of soap, lots of soap. Then he rinsed the soap off. Phil remembered to say, "May I please have some milk?" That was very polite. When he took the carton of milk, Phil had good manners. He didn't want to be like Mr. Bungle in the lunchroom. At the end of the line, the lunchroom supervisor said she had noticed how polite Phil was. She wouldn't smile at a Mr. Bungle. He put his tray down carefully, pulled out his chair quietly, and sat down. He knew his friends wouldn't like a noisy Mr. Bungle at their table. Before Phil began to eat, he always put a napkin on his lap. He saved his cake for last. Only a Mr. Bungle would eat his dessert before he'd finished the rest of his lunch, but not Phil. Were his hands clean? No, they were a little dirty.
The cake was good.
Phil was the last one done. He wiped his mouth and hands carefully with his napkin. And Phil wasn't a Mr. Bungle, so he put his chair neatly into place. Are you like Mr. Bungle? Mr. Bungle is a shame because he spoils lunchtime. Don't be like Mr. Bungle.